All right, thanks everybody for joining. This is the Intermacs and Pedimacs user group webinar. Um, Appreciate everyone joining. It's been a little bit since we've had one of these calls. So looking forward to getting back into these monthly webinars. So I'm going to go through a few updates, and then we do have a guest speaker with us today. We're going to be starting a new series in 2026, and I'll get into that in just a few minutes. So we do have a speaker with us, and then we will have some time for Q&A at the end of the call. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A box for us, and we'll address those questions today. So today on the line from STS, we have Nancy, Carol, Leanne, Emily, Banu. So thank you everybody from STS for joining. And then from Kirkland Solutions, the Intermacs Data Warehouse, we have Brandon Singletary on the call, and we also have John Pennington, who will be joining in a little while. And then we have a member of our core group, Sylvia Lawton, joining. And then we have Rebecca Harap. She is our guest speaker today that's going to be talking about the screening log and the demographics form. Rebecca is a core group member and is very well seasoned in Intermacs.
We also have Kate joining us from the STS.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. Apologies. Yes.
That's okay.
Thanks, Nancy. And then I did want to just give a quick reminder that the quarter three reports went out on December 31st. And for the quarter four reports, the data entry deadline is January 31st. So that will be coming up this weekend. So just want to give that reminder. And then just a reminder when sending emails, if you need to send names, date of birth, any PHI, please send them in a secure or encrypted email, not through regular email. And if you don't have the option to do that, or if you're not sure if you can reach out to me and I can respond to you with a NEO certified email and you can respond to that. So just a reminder, please don't send PHI through regular email. You can use Intermacs IDs. Those are not considered PHI. So if you need to refer to a patient and you have the Intermacs ID, you can always send that through regular email. So just a reminder there. Our next user group calls will be coming up in February and March. First one on February 25th at 1 p.m. Central, and then again March 25th at 1 p.m. Central. So hope to see you there. And just a reminder, if you're ever not able to join these calls, they are recorded and on the YouTube page. So you can always go back and record these, or I'm sorry, view the recordings. So as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a series in 2026. There's some changes coming to Intermacs this summer. In July, you'll see a new Intermacs platform and some edited adverse event forms, and some of our other forms are being a little bit too. So what we're planning to do is we're going to have a series starting now with the January webinar moving forward. So our first session today will be reviewing the screening log and the demographics form. On our next webinar, we'll be going over pre-implant and implant forms, followed by follow-up forms, implant discharge, 1 year post-cessation patient transfer form, and then that will take us into the spring and we'll start going over those adverse event revisions. So that's what we have on tap for 2026. And then if you ever have any questions, here is Nancy Honeycutt's information, myself. And then if you have any reporting questions, Brandon's information is here as well. So feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. All right, so with that, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can talk about the screening log and the demographics form, and I will stop sharing here.
Sounds good. I will try my best to get this up.
Okay.
Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes. I
Excellent.
think you might be just need to
Yep.
scroll
I
up
need
to
to,
your, yeah,
yep. Hold on. I thought it was in presenter mode. There already. Here we go. There we go. How's that look now?
good. We can, yep, that's perfect. Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca. Um, Thank you to the STS for having me today. As Patricia was saying, I'll be talking about putting a patient in to Intermacs. That's really what we're going over today, the first two steps. I hope you're all joining us warm and safe as this crazy weather's gone across the country. So I'm glad you all could make it today. But with that, let's get started. I'm hoping that you walk away with today is how to successfully screen a patient in Intermacs, whether they are included or excluded, where to locate excluded patients in the database. And then I just want to go through the variables on the demographic form, break down where you can find them in the medical record. So the screening log, how we get a patient into Intermacs. Well, the first thing we want to ask is, what's the implant date? So you go ahead and put that in. And then from there is a decision point. So we need to decide if our patient is going to be included into Intermacs or if it's going to be excluded from Intermacs. So the inclusion criteria in Intermacs is, did the patient receive a durable mechanical circulatory support device that is FDA approved? That's the big talking point there. And was the VAD implanted on or after March 1st of 2006, which is going to be everybody from now on. So really it's only that important one. The first one. If your patient meets that inclusion criteria, you're immediately going to go down to the device type and choose, was the patient given an LVAD, an RVAD, both an LVAD and an RVAD in the same OR visit, or a total artificial heart? And I will make a statement here. So the LVAD would be durable. The standalone RVAD would be durable. But if you have both the LVAD and the RVAD in the same OR, only one of those has to be durable. The other one can be a temporary device. As soon as you select the device type, you're going to have pop-ups of either your LVAD device brand or your RVAD device brand. Each list will have an other or a specify area where you can free text in. If for some reason the VAD that you're implanting is not in this list. So that's for the inclusion criteria. But we do have some exclusion criteria. And here for a bit, we haven't really had to worry about that exclusion criteria because we were mostly in the adult world or in the adult world implanting HeartMate 3s, and it was an FDA approved device. So we didn't have to worry about this exclusion quite as much. At that point, the only exclusion was if the patient was a prisoner, if they were incarcerated. But as of late, I'm sure all of you know this, we've started the Innovate trial in the United States. And the Innovate trial is putting the BrioVAD, which is not FDA approved, head to head with the HeartMate 3, which is FDA approved. So if your center is participating in the Innovate study, any BrioVAD that you're putting in will be a non-FDA approved device and will meet that exclusion criteria. I'm going to go a little bit more into that in the next slides, but before we do, I would like to just talk about a couple things to remember. Uh, Patients must be 19 years old to be entered in Intermact. So just that's kind of a hard cut. If they're 18 years and 362 days, they don't make it. They must be 19 years old. Also, my center is not, we don't do kids. So I don't do Pedimacs. But if you had a child who was implanted in their late teens in Pedimacs, when they turn 19, you don't automatically put them into Intermacs. They'll just continue in Pedimacs. But if they have an exchange or a new implant of any type as an adult, then they would go into Intermacs. And then finally, if you do have an LVAD and RVAD in the same OR, just keep in mind that you'll need to fill out that early right heart failure AE for a temporary RVAD or a durable RVAD that's placed at the same time. Okay, so let's get into this Innovate trial and how the patients are being placed into Intermacs. So to start with, any of your HeartMate 3 patients that are FDA approved and not in the study, nothing changes. You're putting those into Intermacs just like you always have been. But if the patient is in the Innovate trial and they are randomized to a HeartMate 3, Nothing changes. They still should be included in Intermacs and be put in with inclusion criteria, under the inclusion criteria. The only thing that will be different is on the demographics form. The three questions that are, was the patient involved in a VAD-related study? The answer would be yes, and then you'd name the study, the Innovate trial. And this trial is not an industry-sponsored post-approval study, so you'd click no with this. Really, the only thing that changes is for these BrioVAD patients. So if you have a patient in the Innovate trial and they're randomized to the BrioVAD, they will not be enrolled in Intermacs. The only form you'll be filling out is the screening log. So you'll go into the screening log like I have here in front of you. You'll put the implant date, and then under exclusion, you will click patient receives a durable mechanical circulatory support that is not FDA approved. And that is the main and only reason why they are excluded unless they happen to be incarcerated as well. From there, it's going to ask the same questions, device type, LVAD, device brand. You will need to put other, specify, and type in BrioVAD. And then you'll have some other questions that open, variables that open. And this is going to look very different than your patients who are included. There's no patient identifiers. There's no patient name, date of birth, anything like that. Instead, it's going to ask for the age range of the patient. It will still ask for the race and ethnicity and the gender of the patient. Did death occur within 2 days post implant? I do want to call that one out. So you're not going to be able to screen these patients in Intermacs until you hit the 2 days post implant mark because you'll need to answer this question. So don't try and go in on the day of the OR and screen them because you will need to answer this question and sign off. Did they pass within 2 days post implant? Then you've seen these questions before. Is the VAD an investigational device? Yes. Are they in a VAD-related study? Yes. We put the Innovate trial. And then again, it is not an industry-sponsored post-approval study. So once you hit submit, what happens to these excluded patients? Well, you'll never really see them again. They're not going to show up in your patient list. You'll never see a name because you didn't put in a name. They actually go to this excluded area within the database. And so if you want to double check that everything went in correctly, the way that you find this is that you go to your Intermex home screen, you go to the patient list tab, and there above the search bar, you'll see the word show excluded patients. And if you click on that, it will open. Again, there won't be any patient names. It'll just be an ID, your hospital, device type, and then you can tell that it went in correctly because you'll see the device brand is BrioVac and the implant date is the implant date of the patient that you put through. Again, nothing else with those BrioVac patients. You've done all that you need to do in Intermacs at this point. But with the HeartMate 3 patients on the Innovate trial or any other FDA-approved device that you're putting in Intermacs, as soon as you screen the patient, you're going to get your demographic form. You're actually going to get your demographic form, your pre-implant form, and your implant form will all populate. We're only going to focus on the demographic form here today. But the demographic form, I feel, is pretty straightforward. I mean, this is really just your patient identifiers and then a couple other key questions. So for me, I always go to the face sheet, the patient's face sheet in Epic, or if you just click on their picture up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a modified face sheet that opens up. And here you can find almost every bit of information on this form. We're looking for first, middle, and last name, their medical record number, the last 5 digits of their social security number, all of their address information, so their street, their city, their state and zip, their health insurance claim number, if available, date of birth, gender, and then their ethnicity and their race. And I would like to call out for just a second that health insurance claim number. This is a number given by CMS to every patient. It's a Medicare number. And if your patient doesn't happen to have one, or if your center doesn't want you to enter that due to privacy issues, it's not a problem just to click on or select unknown. And I think these questions are really straightforward. These next couple of questions are sometimes a little harder to find. So the demographic page is going to also ask the marital status of the patient, their highest level of education, and if they're working for income. And depending on if you click yes or no on that working for income, it's really going to get down into the weeds a little bit about, are they working full time? Are they working part time? And if they're working part time, why? Are they partly on disability and they can't work so many hours? Do they just choose to work part time? And then sometimes I can't ever find that. Sometimes I cannot find that in the medical record. So there is a piece here that just says working part time versus full time unknown. And then if the patient isn't working, we also ask a few questions about that. Are they not working because they're on disability? Are they lucky enough to be retired? Or is it not applicable because they've been hospitalized? I personally find all of this information in my social work note, but anybody who's doing your psychosocial evaluation for your VAD workups are going to be assessing for these questions, and you'll be able to find that there. And then lastly, you have seen this before on a couple slides, but the demographic page is going to ask if the patient is involved in a VAD-related study for every patient. If the answer is yes, go ahead and name the study, and then let us know if it is an industry-sponsored post-approval study. If they're not in a study, great, just click no and we won't have to worry about anything else. I will say though that Intermacs is looking for these big industry or manufacturer sponsored studies. So these are not going to be your smaller, maybe single or couple center studies that your site may be participating in. So if you have a question and you're not sure if it should go into Intermacs or not, reach out to your study team, your surgeon, or I'm sure Patricia at STS can let you know as well if that needs to go in. The Innovate trial is an IDE trial, hoping to have BrioVAD become commercially available and FDA approved. So the last trial that I can remember pre this was the Momentum trial when we were looking at HeartMate 3 versus HeartMate 2 for its IDE, for its commercial availability and FDA approval. And then an example of an industry-sponsored post-approval study. So that is already FDA approved, but then there's a subsequent study. And so the main one that I remember with this was a heartware study called DT Pass years ago, where hardware was approved commercially for bridge to transplant, but the DT Pass study was helping to have it approved in the destination therapy study, our long-term setting. So something that I can kind of think of some of you may be familiar with. So with that, I hope that I made it clear as mud, the inclusion and exclusion criteria for screening patients in Intermacs, and then a little bit of a talk through how it works with the Innovate trial and the BrioVAD patients, and then finally the demographics page. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was perfect. We do have a couple of questions. The first question from Tiana, if a patient is incarcerated or refuses to sign the consent to be entered, do we enter the screening log for them too?
Yes, so you screen everyone. You would just need to screen them as they're incarcerated, so they will be excluded and they'll go into your excluded file.
Right. So that would be completing the screening log. And then there's like about 7 or 8 additional questions that you do complete. And then when you go to your patient list, you can click on the right-hand side to excluded list, and you'll see that patient with the implant date populate on there.
Correct. Yep. Great question.
And then the next question from Carrie, we've placed 3 Brios in the last 6 months. Should we go ahead and enter them now, or do we only start if they were implanted after January 1st, 2026? No, you can go ahead and enter any of those Brio VADs. Remember, you'll just enter them as excluded. But yes, you can enter them at any time.
Yes,
Any
congratulations.
implant
Great
date.
stuff.
Yeah, any implant date can be entered. Right. And then we've got another question from Louisa. Should patients who were part of a trial when the HeartMate 3 was still not FDA approved, should they have been captured here? So my understanding is that they were originally told not to be entered, that it was not an FDA approved device. And then there was a decision made to then capture those patients. And if your facility had the bandwidth to enter them, they should have been entered. But if they were not entered, that's okay too. So it's kind of if you had the ability, but at this point, it's way too far back. The data integrity would not be good to go back and enter patients from 2017, 2018. So if they're not entered as of now, that's totally fine because that was the communication not to enter them.
Thank you for taking that one, Patricia. I did not know the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. It was a decision that came out after the HeartMate 3 was approved, that they could go back and be entered. And there was a letter that, if your center needed a letter saying they could be entered, there was a letter sent out saying that they could then be entered. Now we have a question from Bill. Can you refresh my memory on AEs? Are there changes coming to bleeding? Yes, bleeding is one of the adverse events that is being revised. We're currently looking at those forms and fine-tuning them, and the plan is they will go live July 1st. So all the AEs will go live at the same time. And through the spring and into June, we'll be educating and reviewing how the forms look now and what the process will be.
Perfect.
Okay, and then Louisa has another question. And do we not fill out the screening logs for patients under 19 years old?
Correct. You have to be 19 to be entered into Intermacs.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you have Pedimacs, I do not do Pedimacs, but they would go into Pedimacs, correct, Patricia?
Yes, they would go into, if they were under 19 years old and your center participates in Pedimacs, they would be entered over there. When they turn 19, as Rebecca said, they are not then transferred over to Intermacs. They're just continued to be followed into Pedimacs. And then Nikki has a question. Do patients need to sign consent to be entered? That is site specific, and that is up to your local IRB. Intermacs does not require consent, but that is up to your center and your local IRB whether or not consent is required. Not all centers require it. Any other questions? And Amy, I did see your question, and I responded with my contact information, so we'll get you your account reactivated. So yeah, so thank you, Rebecca. So this is, like I said, this is the first of the Intermacs Pedimacs series. So on our next webinar in February, we'll be talking about, hopefully we'll be able to get in the pre-implant form and the implant form on our next webinar. So if anybody at your center wasn't able to join today, this recording will be recorded and it will be on the STS website. Oh, hi, Louisa. The user guide doesn't always include all the options for AEs. Is this purposefully? Like not all the answer options? I'm not sure what you mean. If you could just provide a little more clarification. Like neuro is missing 1G for traumatic brain injury ends at 1F. I'm not sure, Louisa. I'll take a look at it and see what is missing there. And if we need to update it, we can update it and put it under the Intermacs appendices. I'll take a look at that, neuro. All right. So our next webinar will be February 25th at 1 o'clock Central Time. So we hope to see you all there. Dorothy, I see your hand is raised. Did you want to come off of mute? Did you want to ask a question? Let me see here. Oh, okay. Just a mistake. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So our next, we got another question. If a patient becomes incarcerated, should they be removed? That is up to your center. So if the patient isn't going to be coming to clinic for follow-up and you're not going to be able to capture data for adverse events in follow-up, we do have the option to deactivate the patient so they will no longer be generating follow-ups. But if they are going to be coming and you are able to, capture that data at clinic, you can just leave them in there. So it's up to you. It's, center specific if you're able to capture the data fully or not. Good question. Right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you're going to enjoy this series as we go through each of the data collection forms. Oh, we do have one more question. How does the report affect if all the data is not entered by the end of January 31st? So if you aren't able to get all your data in by January 31st, that's fine. It just won't appear on the report, but it will appear on the following report. So once it's entered, it will populate on the next report.
Those next reports are just through the end of 2025 anyway. We give y'all some lag time for stuff like this. So, if you're up against the wall, just try to get everything in that would have been something that happened before the end of December, because that's all that's going to be featured in those reports anyway.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. We will meet again February 25th. Look forward to seeing you and thank you all for your time today.
Thank y'all. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks,
Of course, thank
Rebecca.
you
Thanks,
all. Bye-bye.
Patricia.